from Ohio's 12th District for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. My first question is for Commissioner Carr. The FCC is an immensely important agency regulating media, auctioning, and relocating spectrum and helping get Americans connected, amongst many other things, within their purview. During a recent markup, this committee passed Mr. Carter's H.R. 3557, the American Broadband Deployment Act. I included an amendment in that bill that would help streamline the permitting process for deployments over or under rail crossings. Commissioner Carr, outside of congressional action, what can the FCC do to streamline the permitting process for deployments across rail crossings?
Well, thank you, Congressman, for your leadership. I think the legislation that you've introduced has identified a real serious problem. I've tried to spend a lot of time in this job on the road, meeting with the telecom crews that build out fiber and other connections. And right from the get-go, they said that railroad crossings is just a really difficult issue in terms of the timelines of getting approval and the costs. And I think our jurisdiction to do something about that would be very stretched. So I think that we really need something like your legislation to pass.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. Madam Chairwoman, the FCC under the Trump administration took a number of steps to streamline the permitting process with their rulemakings, specifically when it comes to wireless deployment. Do you plan on retaining these rules and interpretations once the FCC returns to its full complement of commissioners?
To the extent that they've been upheld in court, yes, but I do want to also acknowledge this, that we've got to streamline permitting procedures, but we got to be mindful that most people don't like Washington telling them what they can and can't do in their own backyards. And we're going to have to figure out a way to cooperatively work with communities to get this network infrastructure deployed. And I don't want those relationships to be hostile, friction-filled, or aggressive. We're going to have to work with local municipalities to make sure next generation network infrastructure gets out there.
Okay, look forward to that. Thank you. Back to you, Commissioner Carr. I wanted to follow up with you on the permitting process. What lasting impact has the PI Commission's action on broadband deployment?
I think it's been incredibly successful. If you just look at small cells, for instance, back in 2016, new small cell builds in this country had effectively flatlined. We had something like 708 new cell sites go up. I think some of the data I saw from 2019, for instance, showed that we had 64,000 new cell sites go up. So infrastructure reform really matters, and it paid off during COVID-19. We had robust, resilient networks because of those infrastructure reforms. Flash forward to Europe, their top regulators were asking their streamers to degrade the quality of their video content because they were afraid that the continent's networks were going to break. Our network performed very, very well, and I think at least part of that is due to the infrastructure reforms that were that led from 2017 forward.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question is for Commissioner Carr and Commissioner Symington. You've been sitting there pretty quiet. Shifting gears to spectrum, coordination between the FCC and the NTIA is crucial when the FCC is deciding on spectrum action. Congress has made several efforts at increasing coordination between the FCC and the NTIA, be it through my bill, the Spectrum Coordination Act, or through the recent Spectrum Auction Reauthorization Bill approved by this committee. Commissioners Carr and Symington, can you tell me how coordination with the NTIA has improved throughout your time serving on the commission?
Well, it's always a challenge. At the end of the day, NTIA is intended to represent a lot of federal users, and the entire spectrum process in this country works better when federal users filter their views into NTIA, and then NTIA with authority can represent the views of federal users to the FCC, and then we do what Congress intended, which was we make the final decision on whether this spectrum band can work here or what power level. The challenge we've seen, this isn't unique to this administration, we saw it in the last administration, is once the FCC's experts call the ball, we see a lot of collateral attacks on that decision from federal agencies. So I think what would be good through legislation or otherwise is reinforcing Congress's decision that the FCC is the central authority for making spectrum allocation decisions, and that NTIA needs to be empowered to really speak for the federal agencies with one voice.
Okay, Mr. Symington, you have 20 seconds.
Thank you. I used to serve at the NTIA, The NTIA is a very sophisticated organization scientifically, but it's a small organization. It has it has 200 people as opposed to tens of thousands at some other agencies. If other agencies freelance and don't operate through the NTIA and don't treat the NTIA as a convening center for their views, then the FCC will be unable to coordinate with anyone.
Okay, thank you both very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you,